Before we get started, just a quick note, spoiler alert.
And we are adults, and I will try very hard not to use adult language, but this is the warning.
Hello and welcome to Fright Bites. My name is Jennifer.
And I'm Sadina. Each episode, we will feature a short story or novella. You can read along with us by finding the full reading list posted on our website, lastlibraryonTheLeft.com, or our social media at LLOTL Podcast.
And today we're reviewing one of our top books. We're reviewing The Atrocities by Jeremy Shipp. It was published in 2018 by Tor.com. And quick summary from Goodreads as always. When Isabella died, her parents were determined to ensure her education wouldn't suffer. But Isabella's parents had not informed her new governess of Isabella's condition. And when Miss Valdez arrives at the estate, having forced herself through a surreal nightmare maze of twisted human-like statues, she discovers that there is no girl to tutor. Or is there?
I really liked this book.
Same. This one was so good. I sat with this one afterwards and just kind of like sat with my thoughts of how much I enjoyed the book.
Yeah.
It was really good. This is probably not the first, but this is one of those gothic horrors that I haven't read a really good one in a long time, and I really appreciated the gothic horror because I forgot how much I missed it.
Speaking of gothic horror, so I felt a little anachronistic. The cover is very gothic-y, the hedge maze, the statues, all of that sets a feel. And then Robin, the house caretaker or cook or whatever, she's like, oh yeah, and we have 84-inch TVs in every room. And I was like, excuse me, you have what now?
Yes, because she's talking about all the technology. And I was like, wait a minute, this is new. This is not the gothic horror that I'm used to.
Yeah, I didn't feel displaced like I've felt through some of the other stories where I felt like completely out of place, but it felt anachronistic because there were moments where you felt so in the moment of the gothic house, especially since the Stockton house used to be a church, and I had that feel, that vibe. They'd be like, oh, and our smartphones, and I was like, what?
Yeah. It was kind of unnerving for a bit, and every time Robin mentioned it, I was like, oh gosh, Robin, please stop telling us we're in the modern day, because like I keep wanting to go back. Or even when Dana's like receiving her daily text, I'm like, oh no, you're ruining the ambiance I'm creating in my head.
Not just the text itself, but like what was contained in the text. They were photo images that were like quirky and millennial and like
It was very unnerving.
Yeah, it disrupted it sometimes. I mean, I still fell into the rhythm. Okay, so I'm just going to get this out there. I don't know about you, but the fact that the gardener or whatever, Raoul, because this was very clearly like Haunting of Bly Manor. You know, there was the governess, the caretaker, all those people. The fact that the gardener was named Raoul and Rahul Kohli was so distracting in Bly Manor that literally every time Raoul came into the story, I was picturing Rahul Kohli, and I was heavily distracted.
That is so funny.
And I was just like, you play those movies in your head as you're reading and creating the story, and then they would describe him in like tight jeans and that shirt, and then I'd be like, yeah, it's Rahul Kohli because it's Raoul. Like, that's close enough.
That is so funny. Totally did not get that with Raoul. But so I'm watching it on Netflix right now, which I'm sure a lot of people are, and a lot of people are getting triggered. But there's this whole Rahul Kohli moment where I get completely distracted when a specific actor gets on screen, and his name is Nate, and he very much resembles a Rahul Kohli character, and it's played by a guy named Raymond A. Black. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but oh my god, I'm like. So it didn't happen with Atrocities, but it's happening right now in my binge sessions, and I just put it out there because I wanted to tell you anyways.
I mean, I appreciate it because since Rahul Kohli, because he didn't get me like this on iZombie, for some reason it was Bly Manor, and now it's like that's it forever, and this is my life. So thanks, Rahul Kohli and Mike Flanagan. The only other thing that I made connections to with other films and books and stuff was that in the beginning of this feels very much like the movie The Boy.
I did not watch The Boy.
That was a pretty good movie. Yeah, it kind of set up like The Boy, and so I kind of was already primed for the ending, except that I wasn't. But I didn't like Mr. Evers from the very beginning.
Same.
When you first meet him, the ashes of his grandfather have been spilled on the floor by the fireplace, and it mentions that he is smiling down at them after
Ugh.
they've been dropped. And I was like, why are you smiling?
Ugh. So I didn't focus on that because I was still hyper focused on his forgive me for droning on. That he said a lot throughout the book. And when he was talking to her and he did that little test, I was like, and I don't know why I hyper focused on that. Because you know why? Because he was a giant red flag. And
Yes.
this was after a maze of giant red flags, because the book opens with directions and insane directions. And I wrote down, turn left at the screaming woman with the collapsing face. And I was like, no, I would have turned around and went home.
So if I hadn't read the summary about the statues and the hedge maze to begin with, I would have been very freaked out by those first few lines. The other thing that was very like turn of the screw, I guess, really, was Dana having bouts of anxiety and her perceptions of reality already being kind of screwed up before she got to the house.
Yeah. Wow, I really didn't put it together with Turn of the Screw, but yeah, lots of parallels to Turn of the Screw and Bly Manor. And maybe that's what it kept triggering for me, like a lot of the feels that I had when I was watching Bly Manor. That's a good one. I mean, I wrote down so many things, but like I wrote them so out of order.
So I guess we should probably set up the story a bit more.
Yeah, let's set it up.
So Dana gets there, she's the new governess, and Mr. Evers is not really providing a lot of information, and Raoul and Robin are both like, oh, well, we can't talk to you about the situation here. You have to talk to Mrs. Evers. And Mrs. Evers is telling Dana now, you're going to be my daughter's teacher, but my daughter has had an accident. She's dead and her spirit won't move on, and she's been acting out. And so we think that if we treat her as if she's not dead and that she's just continuing on, she'll stop acting out and stop breaking things and haunting the place. And only Mrs. Evers sees her. Immediately I was like, oh, this woman is dissociating. She's But I did like that there were moments where, because of Dana's unreliability, there were still moments where you thought maybe Mrs. Evers wasn't fully dissociating and that there was some level of haunting going on.
Yeah, because I think you weren't sure. Dana made you second guess what you were thinking as the reader, right? I wrote down here about Mr. Evers that he did everything in his power, even from the get-go, to make Mrs. Evers seem really unreliable too. So you were open to doubting her. And that's why when you got things from Dana and, you know, Dana made you believe sometimes like, oh, is it really a haunting? Is it really a ghost? You weren't sure because of Mr. Evers' passive throwaway statements about Mrs. Evers and her sanity and stuff. And he's just kind of doing this because she wants it to be done. He's that husband, like, oh, just to keep her busy. Like, this is what she wants. We're going to do it. This is how she's dealing with her grief. And I really hated him for that.
Yeah, there were a couple of minor red flags that kind of pointed towards the ending setup for me with Mr. Evers. When she meets him in his studio, I guess, and he's painting, but she notes that he's painted a red eye, a third eye on his forehead, and that it's like really detailed or whatever, but it was only a sentence. And he notices her staring at it and he goes, oh, don't mind this. This is just like a quirk that my grandfather used to do when he would work on his paintings here too. So I sat there and was looking at this sentence and I was like, okay, the third eye thing is not good because all the statues were kind of alluded to have been from the church's time. Yeah. Because they're Christian in nature. I was like, but those paintings, the paintings now we have confirmation that they're an artistic habit from Mr. Evers' family and that the grandfather was doing them and that they painted this weird third eye when they did. And I was like, I don't like the hyper religiosity set up here. It made me very uncomfortable. And so I saw that and I was like, something is going to go terribly wrong.
Yes, those parts are really scary to me too. I was like, oh gosh. But I didn't. So I knew there was something to do with Mr. Evers. I didn't know what. And I would just hyper focus on his statements and how he would be like, oh, pardon this. Oh, don't worry yourself about this. You know, that kind of like demeaning manner, the way he talked to her. And that would make me very upset.
Understandably so. Okay, so I have comments about that too at the very end of this, but Mr. Evers, I would say that studio scene where he painted the eye on his forehead, he had all the like weird bleeding angels with their weird grotesqueries that apparently his family, the men, by the way, men in his family painted. It made me think a lot of John Carpenter. Yeah. I was like, I like John Carpenter, but that's the feel that I'm getting from this.
Yeah, even in the beginning where he's talking about the atrocities and he's like, they're like lessons and we have to learn from them. And I'm like, oh, but do we really need to learn from them, sir?
Yeah, it made me curious if his grandfather was viewing the paintings. The Stockton house used to be a church. Was his family the people who led the church? Are they from the church's following? Did they corrupt the church's following? Like, what is the deal here?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. You know what? That makes a good argument because everything on the ground seems like it's more connected to him than it was ever connected to Mrs. Evers.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like the staff, it seemed like they followed more on what he wanted as opposed to what Mrs. Evers wanted. So I wonder if you're correct, like this was his family home and they were more associated with it. And maybe, gosh, that lends to so much more creepiness. That's so gross.
Yeah, he was really scary because my very last note here is that the ending. So that now, I'm not going to give away the ending. People should be able to read that because that's a fun little ending. It made me wonder: was the last scene with Mr. Evers, was it a statement about domineering men, control, lunacy, and the patriarchy? Like all of it kind of jumbled up together. Was it about abusers and monsters and the realities with which they retain control over the people in their lives? Because he kind of manipulated Mrs. Evers' reality too.
See, for me, the ending, I got more of a Gatsby feel to it after I sat and I thought about it. So very clearly, they're old money, right? And I kept thinking about the characters in Gatsby and how they just kept living their lives, even as tainted as they were. They continued to live on with their horrible, demoralizing lives because, like, Daisy knew nothing else, right? And she had the potential to have more, but this was the safe option for her and this was the better option for her. And the sadness that I felt when Gatsby died, I kind of felt that too with the ending here. And I just kept wondering, like, how do the two parallel each other? And I don't know why, but that book specifically kept coming out to me when I was reading this.
Yeah, I didn't have anywhere close to thoughts of Gatsby, but I love that connection.
Well, the reason I had it was because of Robin. And I wrote in here that Robin reminds me of those that choose to be blinded because of things, right? Almost like she's rich by proxy.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Oh
she
my
kept
God.
talking about all of the things that they give her. And Robin is very clearly like the housekeeper or the maid. And so she is not part of the financial ownings that go on within the house or with the people there. But the way she talks, you think that they're not outright buying her out, but they are buying her out and buying her silence because they give her a phone and it's got megapixels and gigabytes. And she's talking about this so that she doesn't understand.
They lent money to her son?
Yeah, but I just kept coming up with that because of Robin.
That's a really good freaking point, though, because that was one of my notes, is that Robin is way too chatty. She sounds like a used car salesman trying to sell the Evers to Dana.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right, because she mentioned an 84-inch TV 3 times. She mentioned the phones. She mentioned them lending money to her, giving money to her son more than once. Like, she really, yes.
And she talks about the fancy dinners.
Oh, and the pool table?
Yep.
Wow, everything was materialistic for girl. I totally missed that. I thought she was just like chatty and annoying.
Because I see it. I see the people that feel like they're rich by proxy and they use that because they think it's a boost in their social status. And you can tell that really means something to them. And I was just like so fixated on that.
Wow, I like that.
But I also wrote down that Mrs. Evers, anytime she showed up and her grief showed itself, I just felt so sad for her.
Yeah.
Because it was clear that she was grieving, she didn't know how to deal with it, and this was the best that she could do while she was being gaslit by her husband. She wasn't clearly being taken care of properly.
Yeah.
I also wrote that I found myself a lot in Dana, the main character, because she was pushing through loss. And I think we could all relate to that, right? She was pushing through something. And one of the things that I found interesting of her was her view of everyone around her was never that of judgment, but it was always of curiosity. And when I was looking through reviews of this book, I saw a lot of references to Alice in Wonderland.
Oh.
And I was like, that kind of tracks because she let her curiosity take her as far as she got in the story, And so I was like, I kind of like that. I just like that she never judged anyone. She didn't judge Miss Evers too hard. I would have judged him a lot harder and I would have ran away from there a long time ago. So I don't know.
I like that Alice in Wonderland. Gatsby, yeah, that's for so many allusions within like 100 pages.
I know that. So many illusions, but I feel like there's so much out of it and there's so many different ways to interpret it. And those are just notes that I wrote after the fact. So many interpretations from just a short little story. Because how many did we give?
Yeah, I gave The Boy, Bly Manor, you gave Gatsby, and Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, so many different interpretations. And I'd like to know if anyone else has any that are different from what we have.
Yeah. Oh, and I gave John Carpenter.
Yeah, so many.
Wow. Ooh, y'all, we're almost done too. Can y'all believe it? I can't.
I cannot. I was fully expecting halfway through to be like, you know what? We're done with the 31 days.
Even though it was my dumb idea, I kind of expected us to lose steam.
I really did, but I think we really got into a group there for a while, and that really helped us. And so now we just got to keep it up, and we'll finish. And we hope y'all are enjoying the ride with us, because it really has been fun.
Yes. Thank you for helping me complete a large portion of my TBR, by the way.
Because you said you have an endless, but I was like, we're going through so many of these.
All right, guys, we will see you tomorrow. And I believe tomorrow is Monster of Ellenhaven, which is, I hope y'all are looking forward to it.
Oh, it's going to be fun. Bye, y'all.
All right, bye.
If you liked listening to us ramble on about horror, subscribe to our podcast and tell your friends. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at LLOTL Podcast.
Check out our website by going to lastlibraryontheleft.com. Be sure to visit our About Us page to discover our 2 truths and a lie. Or, if you'd like to send us an email, you can reach us at somethingwicked@lastlibraryontheleft.com.